But moving right along, um, the our next speaker is Gregory P. Stringer. He holds BAs in History and Classics from Boston University, an MA in Medieval History from the University of New Hampshire, and an MA in Latin Pedagogy from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. He teaches Latin at Burlington, Massachusetts High School, and in his immersive classroom, students listen, speak, read, and write directly in Latin. He has written and presented broadly on Latin pedagogy and Roman and medieval history. And for years, he has led Latin learning programs in Rome for students and teachers. Today, he's going to talk to us about outreach and engagement with hashtag Classics Twitter movie, which I'm eager to hear about. Gregory?
Hi, thank you, Gregory, and thank you, Daryl, for that paper as well. I think these will tie nicely together, which is, I'm sure, what Meredith and the organizers were going for. So well done. I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation. Just a second to get it running. All right. All right. So let's go screen on that. So yeah, this is outreach and engagement with hashtag Classics Twitter movie. So what is, I just threw this in there because I don't know how familiar people might be with Twitter or not. If you're not on Twitter, you don't use Twitter. What is a hashtag? I'm sure you've heard the name, but basically it's just a shortcut that was created to be able to identify specific content, especially on Twitter, but it's bled over to the other platforms as well. For example, hashtag Classics Twitter includes thousands of tweets per month from hundreds of people from all over the world. So it's a quick and easy way to just see like what's the classics hive mind thinking these days, and the big conversations that are happening in the world of classics. But it's also become a community with sort of recognizable accounts and personalities. You can see there some of the top users and accounts. Because I was tweeting a lot about this conference, I made it into, when I took this screenshot this morning of a sort of social media analyzer that tells you, our own Dave Wright, of course, some of you might know the Rogue Classicist as well, etc. So some of these are sort of recognizable personalities. And of course, Antiquity and Media Studies, right? Made it up there as well, obviously, since people are tweeting about the conference. So, what is hashtag Classics Twitter movie? It's basically a weekly informal synchronous get together where we sort of plan to watch a specific film, usually Sundays at 2 p.m. About the ancient or classical world, sort of broadly defined. So including movies that are receiving ideas or thoughts or stories or myths from the ancient world and reinterpreting them. It's also sort of a somewhat organized opportunity for people to get acquainted with, what are the films that receive the ancient world? What do they look like? And to talk about them. So sometimes it's, the exact films that Daryl was just talking about, of course, like Disney's Hercules 300, sometimes, something like Pan's Labyrinth. And sometimes we go on complete curveballs, which I'll get to later. It's meant to be accessible too. We try to pick movies that are either free, inexpensive, broadly available on places like Netflix or Amazon Prime or other platforms that presumably people have access to, that some people have access to, or if not, that are relatively cheap to rent, between $1 and $5. I think in total, I probably spent maybe about $50 over the 30 films that we've watched over what is now 7 or 8 months. So whence came hashtag Classics Twitter movie? So it actually started as just an informal conversation about the film Agora. Basically, someone asked, Dell asked, like, is this worth watching? And sort of I chimed in. I was like, oh yeah, actually, I think it's pretty good. It's not perfect, obviously, et cetera. Other people started chiming in, and then we kind of just made a plan to watch it all together. And then immediately after, people started tweeting like, okay, when are we doing this again? So, it sort of just became a thing. I think obviously the pandemic helped keep it going because people were, locked inside without a lot of stuff to do. And so it was a good reason to connect with friends and strangers and new people. I got to interact online with people who want to watch and engage with the same movies I do. I live alone, so it was a nice way to talk with other people who want to talk about stuff I want to talk about. What have we watched? Here's the list of movies that we've watched so far. I'm not going to go through all of them, but a lot of these will come up again. Tomorrow you can join us for Pan's Labyrinth. The following week we're watching a Romanian film called The Dacians, which is supposed to be very good. I've never seen it, so I'm excited for that. Many of these I had seen before, other people had seen before, many of them people had not. Okay. These are our most popular movies based on Twitter activity. Not surprisingly, Troy was far and away the most popular one. I'm sure it was a confluence of factors. It was the beginning of July. So there's over 1,000 tweets going back and forth using the hashtag just around this movie alone. Again, not surprisingly, Disney's Hercules, Gladiator. Some of the others, though, are interesting. We watched a movie called Ahsoka, which is a Bollywood film from 2001 about the Indian emperor. We watched The Lion in Winter, Cleopatra. So why should I'm sure you're sitting there asking yourself, why should I engage with hashtag Classics Twitter movie? Well, community, like I said, especially, during the pandemic where we can't get together and go to the movie theater, et cetera, as we might want to do. Connections. One thing that's been really great about it is across disciplines. I am not, a receptionist by trade. I'm a high school Latin teacher, but I love movies. My mom, grew up and inculcated in me growing up the silver screen and classic movies. When I talk to her about history and I say Mark Antony, I have to say Richard Burton. And then she's like, oh, okay, now I know who you're talking about. So, my love of movies was what brought me into it. But it's helped me connect with, people from across disciplines, levels, and even across the world. We learn from each other. Like I said, we're all from various backgrounds, expertises, have different approaches to classics and to film and what counts as reception or not. And for outreach and engagement, partially to bring new people to the field and create connections, again, across these barriers that would otherwise be there. It's a great place to workshop ideas, which I'll talk about one at the end, test a hypothesis, like, is this a reception or not? And explore the meaning and the limits of what reception actually is. And it's free publicity. The little social media tools that I ran it through to see estimate that the hashtag is worth about $3,000. If anyone wants to buy it from me, I will perhaps consider selling it to you. But as in the number of eyeballs that the tweets have gotten on them it would cost you the equivalent of $3,000 to buy that sort of advertising. So it's a good way to get the word out about different things that are going on at your university, in your classroom, in your school, in your organization. Who is watching it? Well, it's an eclectic mix of educators, students, casual fans. Some are, dedicated cinematic antiquity scholars like our own Tony Keene. Some are just like the big classics Twitter personalities, Amy Pistone, Liz Gloyn. There's been over 100 unique Twitter accounts that have used the hashtag, right? So that's at least 100 people have interacted directly with the hashtag, and actually many more have interacted with tweets using the hashtag. Over 6,000 tweets, only about 1,000 are me, right? Obviously quite a lot of them are me saying, hey, we're watching this movie, what'd you think of the movie? And then me tweeting during the movie. But the other 5,000 are authentically other people, I swear. So how much engagement you can see, obviously, it ebbs and flows based around the Sunday movie. But you'll see little blips during the week when, obviously either I am announcing the next movie or people are reacting to it. Again, you can see July was our big month. But, it's stayed pretty steady since then with about, 700 or 800 tweets a month around these movies. So again, it's just getting eyeballs to the material that we teach that we want to talk about. Here's the past week, for example, right? About 100 total tweets, 23 different users. Reach means how many people actually interacted with those tweets. So either clicked on a link or looked at the picture or watched the video clip or whatever. So 17,000 people saw our tweets, and they passed through the timelines of 143,000 people. So that's, a lot of eyeballs. Again, not everyone's stopping and looking at everything and reading my nonsense, but some people are, so that's good. So we've also had some great collaborations. The first one was during the summer. My friend Sky Shirley, who teaches, she's an independent classicist. She's doing her PhD now in London. She's the founder of Looper Call, you might know her, but she was teaching a women writing Latin class, and she said, hey, we should do a collaboration. And so that led to some interesting collaborations. Also, Victoria Austin at University of Winnipeg, for her film, an antiquity class, we did a collaboration so that her students had a dedicated place to come and look and watch the movies and talk about it and interact, etc. So with the Women Writing Latin, like I said, Sky Shirley, the founder of Looper Call, and it was a lot of fun. We got a lot of different types of movies. That's when we watched The Lion in Winter, which is a personal favorite. I am a medievalist first and foremost. It's an amazing movie, I think. But we also watched a German film called Vision about Hildegard von Bingen. And, a lot of the dialogue was exact quotes from her Latin letters that the students in Sky's class were reading during the week. And then they got to sort of see them interacting or acted out on film. And, again, like it does for my mom, I think it does for students as well. Like it brings these people to life if you have a face that you can attach to a name, in my mind, when I think of, Eleanor of Aquitaine, I see Katharine Hepburn, whether I want to or not, So it's also, I thought, an interesting sort of locus of the continuing conversation. Again, I told you I'm a medievalist by trade. And so the idea of the Middle Ages is actually the medium through which all conversations about antiquity have to happen, right? Because we don't have anything really in terms of written material, except for some inscriptions, et cetera, without the Middle Ages. So it was interesting to sort of see how, in the movie, right, which is made from a play, which the play itself then, is talking about Eleanor's court in ways that are, somewhat fictionalized, but we know that at her court, there were lots of people writing and reading Latin poetry, connecting to the ancients, recopying the ancient material, etc., and sort of how this all sort of intertwines together. It's also interdisciplinary. This fellow from Germany saw this and said, ooh, Hildegard, and then did this whole amazing thread about her music. And so people could learn all about Hildegard's connection to music through his tweets. Caitlin here, Katie, talking about how this portrait of Sor Juana is used in our history class. And so that connected with the film about Sor Juana for students studying, modern art, etc. And then the other collaboration was with Vicki Austin and her Ancient World Through Film class. At the beginning, she has 50 students in that class. At the beginning, only 3 of them were on Twitter. Now 15 of them are. So that means more students who are, directly connecting with the larger classics world. And I think that increases to some degree the possibility, the probability they'll continue on in their studies if they're listening to our conversations, interacting with them. This is a really cool example where one of Vicki's students is sort of tweeting about her experience of the film, and she gets direct replies from 2 professors in the field. Think of how cool it would be to be an undergrad studying classics and your ideas are, upped or approved or commented on, not just by your direct professor, but by professors you've never met, from across the world who are saying, wow, great ideas. Like that, I would imagine would be really reaffirming for students feeling like they're part of the conversation and that they're part of, the classics Twitter world. And we learn from one another, right? Like, again, we all bring our own expertises to these films. And so, someone like Tony, who's probably, seen a movie like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou many, many times, but nevertheless, when he sees it through other people's eyes, right? When we see the films through other people's eyes, we learn more about them. So, there's a lot of cool, fun interactions that go on in that way. It sparks conversation, like I said. Again, Conway's a friend of mine, a fellow Latin teacher. but who was really interested in obviously the political aspects, which Daryl was sort of referring to, the context in which a film like Spartacus was made and how much that plays a role in the film itself, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. And then this brings us to testing hypotheses. So this was my cockamamie theory. Back when we were watching, I think, the Armand Assante Odyssey, we were talking about what makes an Odyssey, what's an Odyssey film, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point I was like, wait a minute, is Rambo an Odyssey? And my friend Amy Pistone had never seen it. And so we went back and forth. And so eventually when we found, once Vicky's class was over, I was like, all right, we're watching Rambo. We're going to find out, like, if my hypothesis is true or not. Keen and Pistone say no. Although I made a valiant effort, I think, to prove that it is. But I was not going to just take this lying down. So this led to much disagreement, much banter, but a lot of interesting banter that sort of turned into a question about what is the nature of reception, which, Tony goes on talking about, again, like if we just take sort of any story that's a journey and decide that that's an Odyssey, like what does that mean? What are we doing? Does that actually help us understand either the Odyssey and or First Blood? So on and so forth. And I like the fact that Tony at the end says, I like the way I formulated this, right? So he was able to sort of work out some of these ideas around the limits and meaning of reception through the conversation. Again, Amy also came down hard on the side that, no, this is not a reception. However, I had some other people come in and say, wait a minute, no, I think maybe it is. And again, you can go and read my thread under hashtag Classics Twitter Movie. This was last Sunday's movie, and where I make my argument. And, so Katie DeBoer came in and said that, maybe it is. Again, people have different sort of views on what makes for a reception, where the limits and boundaries of reception. But I'm going to take this as affirmation that I was not crazy in the first place for thinking this, and that it can certainly be read as a reception, whether or not it is capital T truly a reception or not. But now it's canon, basically, because in some ways, once I sort of put that idea out there and we wrestled with it and talked about it, now there are other people on the internet who have been like, oh wait, hey, is Rambo the Odyssey? Because they saw my tweets and like, so then the idea starts to become canonized in a certain way, which I've sort of summed up with my little adage I created the other day. So verba volant scripta manent, sed pipiationes et volant et manent. Right? This is one of the amazing things about the internet, if you think about it, right? Like it's both rapid fire, connections and so on and so forth, but it also is permanent, right? I can go back and Google all of these tweets. I can go back and read through all of these threads. And so even though it's not, like a publication where I'm going to sit there and work it. So that's, of course, as we all well know from many other things, the good and bad of something like Twitter is that, it's generally sort of off the cuff, but then it's also permanent at the same time. So anyway, in the end, though, we are sort of all a bunch of likable, sort of humble people, right? I sort of offered up at the end, I guess, that I was going to have to defer to the experts on whether or not the Odyssey is indeed being received in a film like First Blood. And I loved Tony's affirmation there at the end of like, you realize that we're all just kind of making this up too. And I really appreciated that. It speaks to the sort of community and sort of friendship that we've been able to create, even though I've never met Tony. But I consider him a friend. I hope he considers me that as well. So, some of the different things that just this sort of random decision to watch a movie together has led to sort of months of interaction and sort of building community around the reception of antiquity in film. So That's it. I'll end with my call to arms. Join us, right? Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're always looking for suggestions. Like, I always feel pressure to like come up with a film each week. It was nice when I had those collaborations with Sky and with Vicky, because then it was like, okay, my schedule was set for me and I didn't have to worry about trying to find a movie that works for us. But yeah, we're always looking for suggestions. So if you're already on Twitter, or if you're not, here's a chance to, or a reason maybe to get onto Twitter and offer us some suggestions. And, you know, thanks again to Vicky, to Katie, to Tony, to Del, to Manai, to Amy and Sky, who these are sort of like the Classics Twitter movie super fans who have kept this going. So that is all I have. Thank you.